Hey everybody, welcome to the second part of making rugs in 3ds Max. If you still haven't seen the first part, feel free to go check it out. We explain how we can make some interesting looking and realistically looking rugs in 3D by using displacement maps. In this second video, we're going to try and create a bit of a different kind of rug. Namely, we're going to try to make something like this. Or here's another one. So as you can see, it's a interesting looking rug. Let's put it at full screen so you guys can see it better. Here's another one that's on the floor. So all in all, it's a interesting looking rug. And if you want to recreate something like this, and you try to do it in the first way that we did it with displacement map, you're gonna have less than optimal result. So for results like this, when you want to make something like this, let me close these. I'm gonna put this one on the side so I can see it. When you want to make something like this, you have a couple of different ways that you can accomplish something like it. The first thing would be to go ahead and from the modifier list, like I'm using the same exact rug geometry from the first part. So from the modifier list, I'm going to try and find my hair and fur modifier. It's in the world space modifiers. So hair and fur. As soon as I click, you're going to see something like this in your viewport. Now, it's kind of looking like it's grass. So let's see what happens when we actually render this. So I'm going to click on the render. And as you can notice, we actually don't have anything here. So what gives? Why is this the issue? Well, the thing is, when you want to use hair and fur modifier, you have to add it as an actual effect. The way to do it is quite simple. All you have to do is go over to rendering, and then you choose effects from here. You can press 8 in the environment, and then just click on effects over here. So for the effects, you have to just click on hair and fur. And from here, you have over here where it says hair and fur, you have this drop down menu next to hairs. Like by default, this is left at buffer. So if we want what we are seeing here to be seen in our renderer, we have two options. We click down, we have geometry, and we have mental ray prim. For now, I'm going to click on the mental ray prim and explain the difference between using the prim and geometry in this video. Alright, so I'm going to click this. We have the mental ray voxel resolution, which is going to be the quality of the voxels, but that's really not important for this rug. So I'm going to close this and just remember we have this on mental ray prim. Alright, so now let's re-render and see what we have. So as you can see, now, because we have that mental prim in our renderer, whatever we are seeing in our viewport, we can see when we press the render button. So since we have something to start with, we can start explaining how we can modify what we have here. Like if we just take a look at this, we're going to see that the hairs are way too big. So the great thing about using the hair and fur modifier is that you have a lot of control over how your rug is going to look like, especially the fibers. The way to control how those fibers are going to look like is through the general parameters tab. Over here on this side, you have a couple of different things that you can change. The first thing that we would like to modify will be the thickness of the actual strands. Let me just close this for a second. The difference is controlled primarily from the root thickness and the tip thickness. In our case, if we take a look at our image, we can see that the tips are sharp to the point where they basically just stop. So we want to have, or we want to keep our root thickness at, or the tip thickness at 0, while we're going to decrease the root thickness. By decreasing this, we're going to make the roots a bit smaller. So let's try with something like 5. Yeah, this is going to give us smaller roots. And Now, the next thing we want to fix would be the actual height of these fibers. They're way too tall. The way to do it is quite simple. Again, just on the scale factor here, decrease it from 100 to something like, I don't know, maybe like 20 or 30. And you can see right away all of these fibers are smaller. So before we start playing around with the other parameters, let's see what we have here now so far. And as soon as the render is finished, we can notice that we have a lot of smaller strands, but now we are faced with a different issue. The fact that we have way too few fibers, and we can see a lot of the base. So now we need to add more fibers. This again is fairly easy to change. All you have to do is increase the hair count. So from the 10,000 we have now, I'm going to go ahead and try a 50,000. And just as a test, so I don't have to wait the whole thing, I'm just going to render just one small region. And as soon as that region is finished, we can see a really big difference between what we had previously and what we have now. So as soon as we have the next iteration, I'm going to render the whole thing. You're going to see everything. So the next thing that we can change here is how the actual fibers are going to look like. What does it mean? Well, if you take a look at our image, you're going to notice that if I leave it off like this and I render out the whole rug, it's going to look perfect with all the fibers going straight, and it's going to look a bit like maybe some uncut grass. We don't want that. We want to have this kind of effect where the actual fibers are twirling around, twisting, and they're like going all over the place. Now, luckily for us, we have a few built-in options that can help us with this. Now, the first thing that we have to do is just scroll down here, and we have here three parameters. We have clumping, frizz, and kink. These parameters control how our strands are going to behave. For example, if I go over the clumping, and I'm gonna go ahead and rotate like this so you can see it better. I'm going to increase the strength a bit, something like 0.6. And now, as soon as I start adding clumps, you're going to notice that all of the fibers are starting to move around. And you can notice as soon as I increase the number of clumps, it's starting to give it more places that the actual fibers are going to start to clump at. So there you go. Let me add in something like 80. All right, awesome. All right, now I'm gonna render the whole thing so we can see what kind of effect we have achieved. And as soon as the render is finished, you can notice that now, instead of having just straight fibers, we have some nice clumped up fibers. Now, the next thing that we can change here would be to change the frizz. And the frizz is basically going to give it a bit more randomization, like the fibers are gonna be bent downwards. You can choose to frizz the tips only or the whole thing. And the other one is the kink, and the kink would give us a bit of a twirl in the actual fibers. So you can see that they start to twirl around or twist around, and we can get a more used up look. So one more time, let's re-render so you guys can see it again. So re-render. And as you can see here, even with the procedural parameters that we had from our kink, frizz, and clumping, we got a really interesting look. And if we compare it to our image over here, or better yet, this one, we're going to notice that we have a lot of similarities between what we had previously and from what we have right now with the original one. So let's see a few more other things that we can control here that directly going to influence how our finished look is going to end up looking. What I mean by this is the actual color. So if we take a look at our original one, if we want to replicate this kind of a look, we won't be able to do this with this yellow color. So we have to change the color. Now, changing the color for these fibers is not done within the material editor. Instead, we have to go, actually I have to mention this. The color is changed in here when you go over to the material parameters if you have MR Prim or Mental Ray Prim set up as your effects. So here you have two colors. You have the root color and you have the tip color. So let's just take a look at our image for a second. If we can notice that the roots are a bit darker colored than the tips. So they have a bit of a creamy color while the tips are more towards white. So we can change that to reflect our image. So I'm going to go over for the root color, click here, choose something like a creamy color, something like this, and I'm going to make the tip color white or nearly white. And another great thing that we can do here is, if you've ever seen one of these rugs, you're going to notice that not all of the strands are the same color. From a certain percentage, like a few percent of the fibers are going to be either darker or lighter than the rest of them. So we can compensate or make that into our scene by simply changing the mutant color. Like over here, if I go in, I can choose and make a few of the strands, like let's just put them up as something like this color. And the percentage over here, I'm going to put it like 5%. That means 5% of all of the strands are going to have this color. So as it is right now, let me re-render so you guys can see exactly what I've done and how that thing is going to affect our scene. So I'm going to render. As soon as the render is done, you can notice that now we have our scene that the render is really starting to look like what we have in our image over here. All right, so we saw how to get this effect, but the beauty of using Hair and Fur Modifier doesn't stop here. It gives you an even extra amount of control over how your rug is going to look like by giving you the ability to manually brush those fibers. And what I mean by this is, if you just go, like scroll upwards to over here, you have this button where it says Style Hair. Once you click it, you're going to notice that the entire scene, let me just zoom out a bit, just so I don't see all of these, the lights, I'm going to press Shift L, that's going to hide the lights, Shift C to hide the camera, and I can just focus on what I have here. As soon as I press the Style Hair, you're going to notice some orange lines. Now, these lines are basically splines that are going to control how your actual strands are going to behave. As it is now, they are normal to the surface of your mesh. But, as you can see, we have this really big green circle in our around our mouse pointer. That circle is defining the area in which, as soon as I start clicking, I'm going to start pulling these lines. And as soon as I release, you're going to notice that all of the little fibers are going to start to follow those lines. Press Ctrl Z for this. And the way to control the size of this green circle is simply just go over here, and you can either decrease or increase that size. Now, in this case, I want to go ahead and just take all of these lines over here and just move them upwards, because I can see some of the fibers here are going through the floor. You'll notice that as soon as I start combing up those fibers, they're no longer gonna be going up to the floor. That should fix that issue for us. And the great thing about it is that you can even choose to like comb up these guys in the middle to something like you would prefer. You can choose to take some from the side, pull them inwards, and get a more custom look to your rug. So as you can see, by just using these finishing these styling brushes, you can do a lot of changes. Now you can change, for example, here it's translate, it's basically moving it. You can choose to clump up. As you can see here, when you click and drag downwards, you're clumping up all of the fibers towards that point. You can choose to have to rotate it. You can scale it outwards or inwards. There we go. You can rotate, twirl them on each other. Like, you can do a lot of different kinds of effects. And the thing is, as soon as you're finished with everything, so just check out these options, and you have the utilities over here. Just a bunch of different options that are going to give you a different effect in the end. You just have to be careful so you don't do something like this. I wasn't really paying attention, so as you can see, I've pulled them downwards. That means that these are going to be a problem, as they're going to be protruding through the actual rug. I don't want that to happen. Just move it up. So as soon as you're finished with something that you're happy with, just press finish styling, and your carpet is going to retain that final change you did. So again, now let's re-render, and from what we changed, we can see that our final result is looking really realistic and interesting. So let's just compare it with what we have here, or better yet, the one we have it on the floor, to what we have over here. So as you can see, it's fairly close. Now, the only thing that I want to mention before I finish with this video is that you don't always have to control the actual color through the material parameters from here. You can control it if you choose to through the material editor. So for example, I have the color set from here. This is the material I've added to the actual rug. If I want to control the color of our rug from here, I have to go back to rendering and effects, and from here I have to change my rendering options from MR Prim to geometry. This way Max is going to take all of these fibers and treat them like their geometry, so they are going to actually inherit the parameters that we have on the actual rug. So that means that, for example, if I take the color from the first video that we made, so I'm just going to copy and paste it in our diffuse color over here. Now we have that the same color on our base, and when we render, we're gonna get a whole different look. Let's see. All right, and now we can see that all of the fibers are taking the color from the base. In this case though, unlike the previous rug, which it looked fine, in this case I guess I would probably, if I were doing this for a project, I would probably make the scale of the fibers smaller, like 15 or so, and then just increase the number of hairs so we don't have any lag here, so 70,000. And if I render out the final render, this should give me a whole different look, or a whole different rug, by just rendering out one final result. So let's see that, and there it is. This is what we got for our final result. So I really hope you guys liked the video. Also, you managed to learn something new about the hair and fur modifier. And if you would like me to make more, then like it on Facebook and like it on YouTube. Subscribe, comment, and share it around so it can reach more people and hopefully help them the same way it helped you. So Take care for now, and I will see you all in the next video.